Hi Bishop, thanks ever so much for buying the music box. This is a routine I've been doing for probably about 15 years or so. This one's a slightly altered version. I've got various versions of them, and I always like to use genuinely old antique objects. I think it just adds to the atmosphere and the emotion of the effect as well. So basically, just to run through, we've got a genuinely antique music box which does work. So you can set, you can put. Well, I'll run through the items first. So we've got a wheel which belongs to I don't know what. I'm not really sure what that comes from, but it's obviously quite intriguing. So that's that, and that's obviously, like I said, they're all genuinely old antique items. We've got an old ointment pot, a Victorian coin, an old vintage card, which I will get back to in a second, and an old key. So they're your items. You can use other items. You don't have to stick with those. You can use whatever you want. You can vary it. You can change it up. And they all, at the beginning of the effect, kind of start outside of the box. You can just run through them. You can have a bit of a backstory. My backstory is that my great grandmother Irene Fisher was a kind of, not a psychic, but she was somebody that had knowledge of other things, of otherworldly things. She kind of knew stuff just before they were about to happen, and she would have premonitions and that kind of thing, which is kind of based on what we're going to do with this one. We're going to basically make a premonition of what's going to happen come the end of the effect. So start with all the objects outside. We can then pop them into the box. You can show people the box. The movement inside is just part of the box and not part of the effect. That doesn't come out, so that just stays there. So they go in. You can either start with them out or start with them in, and then you can wind the box. I won't do it now, so it's going on in the background, but you can see the box works. You can set the whole effect to the music, which could be quite creepy or quite cool, depending on how you're, how you're kind of, what angle you're coming at through with the effect. So the items go inside. I've kind of given you another effect to go with this one, which you can either use with or without, or you can do it separately. And it features a deck of cards, which is basically by Max Major, called the Omega deck, which is a fantastic force deck. And basically the way it works, what you could do is, kind of before you even start off with the effect, you can give your spectator these cards. It's all completely hands off. You can get them to take them out of the box and just say, don't shuffle them just yet, because you don't want them over manipulating the cards. But just tell them to go through the cards, have a look, make sure that they're all in, they're all different and they're in no particular order. And then they can either pop the cards down and just give the cards a cut to mix the cards up. Once they're happy that they're mixed up, they can even take the cards under the table and scooch some cards off and put some from the top and some to the bottom. So you can do that as well. And then when they're happy, just tell them to pop the cards. All the instructions are on the Omega deck box, so you can go and watch the video for that too. You just get them to peek a card, and they're peeking that card. Okay, and then that kind of goes aside, goes back in the box. Just get them to remember that card while we're doing the effect. Don't tell anybody, don't say it out loud that they're thinking of the Seven of Diamonds, but they're the only person in the room that knows that the card that they're thinking of. Free choice, mixed up, they picked, they looked, they're thinking of it, that's it, job done. So we get back to this effect. And the effect is basically is two people. You've got one person on your right and you've got one person on your left. And you say to the person on your right, okay, you're going to start taking objects out of the box, just completely randomly. So because the music's going to be going on, I will pretend that the items are in the box. So basically the person on my right will take out, let's say for example, the key. So they take the key out, and you say to the other person, or before they start taking the objects, when your friend starts taking an object out of the box, can you think of a letter of the alphabet, just completely random, and kind of explain that if they take the key out, don't think of the letter K for key, just think of something completely random, one of the other letters, and don't say it out loud. So your first spectator takes the key out, for example, pops it down, and then you say, okay, if you can think of a letter but don't say anything. Done that? Great, thanks. And then then you say, okay, would you like to take the next object? They take the next object, will be the wheel. Okay, great, fantastic. Can you think of the next letter? They think of the next letter. And then you've got a target object, and my target object, because of the card, is going to be the card, and basically that's why it's folded up. So once you get to the card, they could have taken the key out, they could have taken the ointment pot out, but they could have got to the card last, they could have got to the card first. I'll get to that in a second. But when they get to the card, you go, great, thanks very much. Sorry, I forgot to mention, you've already put this prediction down at the beginning of the effect. You've just basically said, I'm just going to pop this prediction down, we'll get to that later on. So when they get to the card, which is your target object, you say, great, if we can just hang fire then, just now we've got to the card, what is it, the letter that you're actually thinking of now in your mind? And then they tell you, with letter L, for example, and then you reveal. I haven't written it down because I'll explain in a second. It basically says, you can get them to read it. When the person on my right removes the card from the box, the person on my left will be thinking of the letter L. And you've predicted exactly what that person was thinking of. So basically, it's all been done with, or you do it when you're asking the person why they particularly thought of that letter. You've already got a nail writer on through the whole effect. Nobody's going to see it. And as you say, what letter were you actually thinking of? We know what was your thought process. You'll just pop in that letter, and you've left the space in your prediction when you write it out in the bottom right hand corner. So it kind of feels natural, just the way you're holding it, just to pop that letter in that corner. And you kind of word it so it leaves that little space there. So or the other way around, if you're left-handed, leaves the space on the other side. And then as you're talking, just quite naturally, you just pop that letter in that they're talking about, that they've said that they've thought of, and you've then predicted. The reason it's on card, it just makes it 10 times easier to write. It kind of makes sense anyway. It's easier to handle. You can then, once you've done it, just the way you hold your hand, you're completely hiding the nail writer. You can hand it to them and they can read it out. And that's basically the effect. I've given you 2 nail writers because you might already have one. I've given you one which is more of a full thumb, which the pencil lead is a little bit longer, so you might want to get some scissors and just slightly snip off, or just grind, just write it on a piece of card or a piece of paper, just to rough it down a little bit. But one's more of a full finger, and the other one, which is my personal favourite, which is probably the best one you can get, it's the most expensive on the market, it's the Vernet. And basically, just to quickly show you, it's more of a tip, the thumb tip. It's a lot smaller, it's harder, and it kind of just fits over your nail. That's the one that I prefer because it's easier to stay on your thumb. This one's a bit more mouldy, that fits around your thumb. It's kind of whichever one that you're happier using, basically. That's my preferred favourite. So that's the effect. When you're getting to writing the prediction, I've given you 2 pencils. One to actually write it yourself in your own handwriting, because I think it just looks better if you write it than if I was to write it, or it just looks like a random person's written it. So you write it yourself. Like I say, when the person on my right removes the card, or you can change your target object, or you can whatever object you want it to be, the person on my left will be thinking of the letter such and such. And don't forget to ask them what the letter is they're thinking of as you kind of pick up the prediction. Write it in, and then just to draw a little bit of time, you can say to them, you know, what was the thought process of you thinking of that letter? Was there any reason? And while they're saying that, the you know, it's so easy then just to pop it down. Nobody's even going to be thinking anything, and then you can just pop it down in front of them while they're still speaking, and they'll probably forget that you even picked it up and that it was on the table all the time, and they'll read out the prediction to reveal that you've thought of or predicted their thought of letter. I've given you another pencil, basically, so when you write the long prediction already, that's already there on the card. Every time you do the effect, you leave that space blank. So what I've done, I've given you a pencil that I've kind of made unwritable. It looks like it's normal, but I've covered the end in a nail varnish, clear nail varnish, so it won't actually write. So you can make a noise on the card to make it look like you're writing the prediction right in front of them. So just pretend to write, or write a letter to so you're not going squiggle squiggle. You know, write a letter, make a dot like you're doing a full stop, make sounds like you're doing something, but nothing's going on the card at all. You pop the pencil down, and it physically looks like they're convinced 100% that you've just written something down on that card. It's a real faller, even though it's very, very simple. You know, it blows people away, and the effect that it has on people is they will genuinely think it's real. There's no magic trick involved, because it's mentalism, because it's based around this, and you've woven this story. They will genuinely think that you've done what you said you've done. It's so good, and it's so effective. And just quickly to get back to the card routine, you've got, or it could be somebody else sat around that are now just thinking of a card. And you're saying, okay, so you're just thinking of a card. I don't even want to know it is, because if you were to tell me what that card is, I could probably manipulate or do some sort of sleight of hand that I could introduce the card that you're thinking of. So I don't even want to know. And nobody else in this room knows what it is. And then you kind of say, but does this mean anything to you? And you reveal the card, and it's the card that they're literally thinking of, and boom, bang. Because they've handled the cards, they've shuffled the cards, they've mixed them up. When they go away, they'll be telling people that they had the cards in their hands, they shuffled the cards, they literally just thought of one of them. They'll probably forget that they did the lift. The reason it's like a Svengali deck, but it's the other way around. Instead of a Svengali deck where you take the cards off and that's your false card, they shorten the other card, so as you pick up and have a look, that's your false card. So wherever they look in the deck, they're gonna be seeing that card. But you've never touched it. It's such a strong added piece of the effect. And like I say, you can use it separately. You might even have it, I don't know, but combined with the thought reading and that bang, just they thought of a card and it happens to be the card. You can also kind of emotionally you know, involve this story and why this card means something. You know, I'll leave that to you. But that's it. Thanks ever so much for buying the music box. Be great to get some feedback. If you have any questions, then let me know. I will upload this privately on YouTube, so you'll be the only person that sees this. And again, thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy the music box.